Hello, dear friends. Today we will familiarize ourselves with the diary of a German tank crew member. The texts show perfectly the character of the author and his attitude toward the war. Heinrich Müller was a tank commander in the Panzer IV, with number 231 during the Battle of Kursk. Although he is not among the most popular tank commanders, he managed to destroy 73 enemy tanks. Remember to like this video and subscribe to this channel. Here we go. My name is Heinrich Müller, and I was a tank commander in the Panzer IV during the Battle of Kursk. That summer of 1943 was supposed to bring us victory, but instead it brought us face to face with the brutal reality of war. This is the story of my crew and the battle that changed everything. July 4th, 1943. Night before the battle. The air was thick with anticipation. Tomorrow we would launch Operation Citadel, the grand offensive that was supposed to break the Soviet defences and turn the tide of the war in our favour. But as I sat in my tank, the weight of command pressing down on me, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were walking into a trap. "Think we'll make it, Heinrich?" "Hans," my gunner asked as he leaned against the tank, his voice laced with uncertainty. I looked up from my journal, meeting his gaze. Hans was a good soldier, sharp-eyed and steady-handed, but like all of us, he was nervous. "We've trained for this, Hans," I replied, trying to inject some confidence into my voice. "We stick together, keep our heads down, and we'll make it through." Otto, our loader, scoffed. "Easy for you to say. You're not the one who has to shove those damn shells into the breach all day." He was grinning, but I could see the tension in his eyes. Franz, our driver, was quieter than usual. He stared into the fire, lost in thought. "It's going to be hell out there," he muttered, almost to himself. I nodded, knowing he was right. "Just remember your training. We've faced the Soviets before, and we'll face them again. We'll get through this. All of us." July 5th, 1943. The offensive begins. The first light of dawn had barely touched the horizon when the order came down the line. "Advance." My heart pounded in my chest as Franz pushed the throttle forward, the Panzer IV lurching into motion. Around us, the other tanks of our division moved as one, a steel juggernaut rolling towards the enemy. The calm of the morning was shattered as the first shells began to fall. Soviet artillery had zeroed in on our position, and the ground erupted in fire and smoke. "Keep moving!" I shouted into the intercom, trying to keep my voice steady. "Don't stop for anything!" We pressed forward, the tank rocking violently with each explosion. The air was thick with dust and the acrid stench of burning oil. I could hear the frantic chatter of the radio, reports of tanks hit, men down, but there was no time to think, no time to process. We were in the thick of it now. "Enemy tanks, 2 o'clock. Hans's voice cut through the chaos, sharp and urgent. I swung the periscope around, catching sight of the Soviet T-34s emerging from the smoke. "Hans, on target!" I barked. Hans didn't hesitate. The gun roared, the recoil jolting the tank as the shells slammed into the lead T-34, sending it up in a ball of flame. "Good shot!" I shouted, but there was no time to celebrate. More T-34s were closing in, their guns flashing as they returned fire. "Franz, zigzag! Don't give them a clear shot," I ordered, my heart pounding in my ears. Franz yanked the controls, weaving the tank in and out of the line of fire. Another explosion rocked the ground, a Panzer III to our left taking a direct hit, its turret blown clean off. "Damn it!" I cursed, gripping the controls tighter. "Hans, keep firing! Otto, stay sharp!" The next few minutes were a blur of action and chaos. We were locked in a deadly dance with the Soviet tanks, every second a fight for survival. Hans was a machine, his aim deadly accurate, but the T-34s were relentless, their numbers seemingly endless. And then disaster struck. A Soviet shell slammed into our right track, the impact sending the tank skidding to a halt. "We're hit!" Franz shouted, struggling to keep the tank under control. "Otto, get out there and see if you can fix it," I ordered, my voice tight with fear. We were sitting ducks, immobilized in the middle of a battlefield. Otto didn't hesitate. He grabbed his tools and scrambled out of the hatch, disappearing into the smoke. My heart was in my throat as I watched him work, every second feeling like an eternity. Hans kept firing, doing his best to cover us, but the pressure was building. The Soviets were closing in and we were running out of time. "Come on, Otto, hurry," I urged, the desperation creeping into my voice. Finally, after what felt like hours but was only minutes, Otto clambered back inside, his face streaked with grease and sweat. "She's good to go, but it's only a temporary fix," he panted. "Good enough," I said, relief flooding through me. "Franz, get us out of here." Franz didn't need to be told twice. He gunned the engine and the tank lurched forward, the damaged track groaning in protest. We were moving again, but the battle was far from over. July 5th, 1943. Evening. By the time the sun began to set, we had fallen back to regroup. The day had been a nightmare, a maelstrom of fire and steel, but somehow we had survived. The tank was in rough shape, the right track barely holding together, the engine overheating and the hull peppered with shrapnel, but it was still running, and that was all that mattered. "That was close," Franz muttered, wiping the sweat from his brow. He looked as worn out as the tank, his face pale, his hands trembling slightly. "We got lucky," Hans agreed, lighting a cigarette with shaky hands. "Too damn lucky." Otto was already under the tank, tools in hand, trying to patch up the worst of the damage. "If we don't get this track fixed, we're not going anywhere tomorrow," he grumbled, more to himself than to us. I knew he was right. The battle was far from over, and if our tank wasn't in fighting shape by morning, we'd be left behind, or worse, caught defenseless by the enemy. "Do what you can, Otto," I said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "We'll make it through this, one way or another." As night fell, we worked together to repair the tank. Otto handled the mechanical work, while the rest of us checked the ammunition, cleaned the gun, and patched up the hull. It was grueling work, but it kept our minds off the horrors of the day. None of us wanted to think about the friends we had lost, the tanks that had been destroyed, the men who wouldn't be returning home. By the time we finished, it was well past midnight. The tank was far from perfect, but it was functional, and that was enough. We settled down for a few hours of rest, knowing that tomorrow would bring more of the same. July 6th, 1943. The battle continues. We were back in the fight at first light, our tank limping along with the rest of the division. The battlefield was a wasteland, the ground torn apart by countless explosions, the wreckage of tanks and vehicles littering the landscape. The smell of burning oil and cordite filled the air, a constant reminder of the destruction around us. "Contact 9 o'clock!" Hans shouted, snapping us back to the present. I swung the turret around, spotting a group of Soviet T-34s advancing through the smoke. "Get ready!" I barked, my heart pounding in my chest. "Hans, take the lead tank. Franz, keep us moving. We can't afford to get bogged down." Hans fired, the gun roaring as the shell sped towards its target. The lead T-34 exploded in a shower of sparks and metal, but the others kept coming, their guns blazing. "Incoming!" Otto shouted as a shell whizzed past us, missing by inches. The tank shuddered as Franz swerved to avoid a crater, the damaged track threatening to give out at any moment. "Hold together, damn it!" I muttered under my breath, willing the tank to keep moving. We were outnumbered, outgunned, but we couldn't stop. Not now. The next few hours were a blur of constant motion and fire. We fought like demons, the tank becoming an extension of ourselves as we manoeuvred through the chaos. Hans was relentless, his aim deadly, but the pressure was overwhelming. The T-34s were everywhere, their numbers seemingly endless. And then disaster struck again. A Soviet shell found its mark, slamming into our engine compartment. The tank jerked violently, smoke pouring from the rear as the engine sputtered and died. "We're hit!" Franz shouted, his voice tight with panic. "We're not going anywhere!" "Everyone out," I ordered, my heart sinking. We were sitting ducks, and the Soviets were closing in. "Grab what you can and move!" We scrambled out of the tank, grabbing our weapons and whatever supplies we could carry. The battlefield was a nightmare. The sounds of battle deafening, the air thick with smoke and dust. We ran, keeping low, ducking behind the wreckage of other tanks and vehicles as we tried to put some distance between ourselves and the burning Panzer IV. My heart pounded in my chest, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I turned to my crew, weighing our options. We were outnumbered and outgunned, but we couldn't just give up. We had to keep fighting, keep pushing forward, no matter the odds. "We'll take our chances," I decided, looking at the infantryman. "Point us in the right direction, and we'll figure out the rest." He nodded, pointing towards a narrow path that wound its way through the trees. "Follow that trail. It'll take you to the main road. From there, you're on your own." I thanked him, and with a final nod to the others, we set off down the trail. The battle was far from over, but we were still in the fight. As long as we drew breath, we would keep going. We were soldiers, and we had a job to do. The Battle of Kursk was one of the bloodiest and most brutal battles of the war. We fought with everything we had, but in the end it was the sheer will to survive that kept us going. My crew and I made it back to headquarters that day, and we were assigned to another tank. We kept fighting through the bitter months that followed, but the memories of Kursk never left us. They haunted our dreams, reminding us of the cost of war. I write this not for glory or honour, but so that the world will remember the sacrifices made by so many. War is hell, and those who survive it are forever changed.